The office tower stood tall against the evening sky, its glass windows reflecting the fading sunlight as the city buzzed below. Inside, the building was unusually quiet. Most employees had already left for the day, their desks empty and their computers shut down. Only the soft hum of fluorescent lights and the distant echo of footsteps remained. Down one of the long corridors, a man in a faded blue janitor's uniform pushed a cleaning cart. His name was Rahim, the janitor no one really paid attention to. He was always there, sweeping floors, polishing glass doors, emptying trash bins, but to most, he blended into the background like the furniture. With a gentle rhythm, he mopped the marble floor, humming a tune quietly to himself. Just as he dipped the mop into the bucket again, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed from the conference room. Two men in sharp suits appeared, speaking rapidly in French. Their tone carried both frustration and urgency. Greater than, "O est la sortie principale. Nous sommes en retard pour notre rendezvous. Where is the main exit? We are late for our appointment." The receptionist's desk was empty, and no one else was around to help. The men looked around anxiously, clearly lost in the maze-like hallways. They spoke faster, their voices rising in impatience. Rahim paused, lifting his head. His eyes softened with recognition as he caught the words. He leaned his mop gently against the cart and stepped closer, his voice calm and steady. "Greater than, messieurs, la sortie principale est juste en bas du couloir à gauche. Ensuite, prenez l'ascenseur jusqu'au rez-de-chaussée. Gentlemen, the main exit is just down the hall to the left. Then take the elevator to the ground floor." The two men froze mid-step. Their eyes widened, surprised that the janitor, this quiet man in worn shoes and rolled-up sleeves, had spoken flawless French, not just a few words, but with perfect fluency. One of them blinked and asked cautiously, "Greater than, vous parlez français? You speak French?" Rahim smiled politely, as though it were the most ordinary thing in the world. "Greater than, oui, couramment. Yes, fluently." The men exchanged a look, their frustration instantly replaced with gratitude. They thanked him, their tone now respectful, before following his directions. At the far end of the corridor, a young employee named Maya had witnessed the entire exchange. She had been gathering files from the storage room when she overheard the conversation. At first, she thought she was imagining it, Rahim, the janitor, speaking French as smoothly as any diplomat. She peeked around the corner, her jaw slightly open in disbelief. She had worked in this building for 2 years, passing Rahim almost every day. He always nodded politely, always silent, always invisible. She had never thought about him beyond the uniform and the mop. But what she just saw shattered that image completely. As Rahim returned to his mop, calm as ever, Maya whispered to herself. "Greater than, did he just speak French?" She stood there frozen, her heart racing. For the first time, she looked at the janitor not as just another worker in the building, but as someone with a secret, someone carrying a story far greater than anyone imagined. And in that quiet, empty office hallway, the first spark of Rahim's hidden brilliance was revealed. The next morning, the office buzzed with its usual energy, keyboards clattering, phones ringing, and coworkers greeting each other with half-distracted smiles. But beneath that routine, a whisper was traveling through the building. "Did you hear about the janitor? They say he spoke French to those clients yesterday." "No way, are you serious?" The janitor. Every corner seemed to hum with the rumor. Some laughed it off as exaggeration, others leaned in with curiosity, but everyone, without realizing, began glancing at Rahim differently that day. Rahim, however, seemed entirely unaware, or perhaps uninterested. He pushed his cart down the hallway as usual, dusting frames, straightening magazines in the lobby, checking trash bins. His quiet routine remained unchanged, even though the air around him was charged with gossip. Around noon, the glass doors of the lobby swung open, and a group of businessmen from Japan entered. They were sharply dressed, their briefcases polished, their manner reserved. They spoke softly among themselves in Japanese, discussing details of their meeting. At the reception desk, the young receptionist, Emily, fumbled nervously with her English phrases. She bowed slightly, gesturing toward the elevators, but her words stumbled. The visitors looked confused, their expressions tightening with polite discomfort. Rahim had just finished polishing the glass partition nearby. He watched silently for a moment, then set his cloth aside. Slowly, he approached the desk. And then, in perfect Japanese, his voice low yet confident, he greeted them. "Greater than, Yukaswarashimashita 15. Welcome." The meeting room is on the 15th floor. Would you like me to guide you? The businessmen turned instantly, astonishment flashing across their faces. One of them broke into a wide smile, clearly relieved. Greater than. You speak Japanese. Rahim bowed his head slightly, replying with humility. Greater than. Hi. Yes, just a little, but enough to understand well. Their expression softened, their posture more relaxed. They exchanged a few more words with Rahim, their laughter echoing gently in the lobby as the tension dissolved. With his guidance, they found their way to the elevators, thanking him warmly as they left. Emily stood frozen at her desk, her pen still in her hand, her mouth slightly open. She had just witnessed what the entire office had been whispering about, and it wasn't an exaggeration. It was real. Behind her, a few employees had gathered, pretending to check their phones but really staring at Rahim. One whispered, "That's the second language." No, the third. How many does he know? Rahim simply picked up his cloth again, returning to his cleaning as though nothing extraordinary had happened. His shoulders relaxed, his face calm. He did not seek attention. But attention was finding him, whether he wanted it or not. And for the first time, whispers grew into questions. The CEO, Mr. Jonathan Johnson, was a man not easily impressed. A sharp mind, a polished suit, and a reputation for seeing through people defined his leadership. He believed talent belonged at the top table, not hidden in the shadows. That morning, as reports of Rahim's miraculous language skills spread, they finally reached his office. His assistant chuckled nervously while retelling the story, but Mr. Johnson didn't laugh. He leaned back in his leather chair, his eyes narrowing with curiosity. Greater than. Bring him to me, he said simply. Later that afternoon, Rahim was summoned to the main lobby, where the CEO happened to be greeting a few partners. Standing tall, his presence commanding the room, Mr. Johnson approached Rahim directly. The employees nearby held their breath, whispers fell silent. With a sharp tone, the CEO greeted Rahim, not in English, but in German. Greater than. Guten Tag. Wie geht es Ihnen heute? Good day. How are you today? Rahim didn't flinch. He smiled faintly, replying with effortless fluency. Greater than. Mir geht es gut, danke. Und Ihnen? I'm doing well, thank you. And you? A murmur spread across the lobby. The CEO raised an eyebrow, switching immediately to Italian. Greater than. Questo edificio è molto impressionante, non credi? This building is very impressive, don't you think? Rahim responded smoothly, as though Italian was his mother tongue. Greater than. Sì, è vero. È uno dei più belli della città. Yes, it's true. It's one of the most beautiful in the city. The crowd grew tense with awe. Employees exchanged looks of disbelief, their jaws practically dropping. Then came the real test. The CEO leaned forward, speaking in rapid-fire Spanish. Greater than. Dime, ¿cuántos idiomas hablas exactamente? Tell me, how many languages do you speak exactly? Rahim's eyes glimmered for the first time. His voice, calm but certain, carried a weight the office had never heard before. Greater than. Lo suficiente para entender a las personas del mundo entero. Enough to understand people from all over the world. Silence fell over the room. Even the CEO, who rarely showed emotion, was momentarily struck speechless. He studied Rahim with a mixture of astonishment and respect. For the first time, the janitor was no longer invisible. He was extraordinary, standing in the middle of the lobby, his mop and cart beside him, yet his presence larger than anyone else's in that building. And everyone watching knew, something remarkable was about to change. The afternoon sun poured through the tall glass windows of the CEO's office, painting the polished floor in golden light. The room was grand but intimidating, mahogany shelves lined with books, a massive desk stacked with documents, and behind it, the city skyline stretched endlessly. Rahim stood quietly by the door, hands clasped in front of him, his uniform slightly wrinkled, his shoes worn from years of walking the building's halls. He looked out of place in this world of leather chairs and crystal decanters, yet his calm expression suggested he belonged here more than anyone realized. Mr. Johnson, the CEO, sat across from him, his piercing eyes studying the janitor with the same intensity he used when negotiating million-dollar deals. But there was no arrogance in his gaze, only curiosity. Greater than. Sit down, Rahim, the CEO said. Rahim hesitated for a moment, then slowly lowered himself into the chair opposite. He expected questions about his work, or maybe suspicion, as though his talents were some sort of trick. But the CEO's voice softened. Greater than, tell me your story. How does a janitor come to speak so many languages? Rahim lowered his eyes, his voice carrying both humility and quiet strength. Greater than, I wasn't always a janitor. I grew up with a passion for languages. I studied day and night, dreaming of becoming a translator, maybe even a diplomat. Words fascinated me, the way they built bridges between people. I wanted to dedicate my life to that. He paused, his hands tightening slightly. Greater than, but life doesn't always follow our plans. My family fell into hardship. I had to work, any job I could find, to support them. When this janitorial job opened, I took it. It was steady, it paid the bills, my dreams. His voice faltered for the first time. Greater than, they became just books I kept hidden in my apartment, words I practiced in silence when no one was listening. The room grew heavy with silence. Mr. Johnson leaned back in his chair, folding his hands, his expression unreadable. Then, after a long pause, he spoke with conviction. Greater than, Rahim, do you know how rare your gift is? Companies spend millions trying to find people like you, people who can connect cultures, close deals, and represent them across the world. And here you are, hidden behind a mop. Rahim lifted his eyes, unsure if he was being mocked or praised. The CEO's tone sharpened, but not unkindly. Greater than, this company doesn't need you on the floors with a bucket. It needs you in boardrooms. It needs you as a bridge between us and the world. I want you to join us, not as a janitor, but as our new international relations officer. Rahim's chest tightened. For a moment, he thought he had misheard. His lips parted, but no words came. The CEO leaned forward, his voice steady. Greater than, you've spent years cleaning floors. Now it's time you stand tall and open doors. Rahim's throat ached with unspoken emotion. For years he had carried his dream in silence, hidden behind the label of janitor. And now, sitting in the CEO's office, the impossible was being handed back to him. The following week, the company gathered in the main conference hall for an all-staff meeting. Rows of employees filled the seats, their chatter filling the air. Whispers still circled about the mystery janitor, who had stunned the CEO, but no one knew why they had all been called together. At the front of the room, Mr. Johnson stepped up to the podium. His presence silenced the hall instantly. He scanned the crowd, then spoke firmly. Greater than, every company runs on talent. Some talents are easy to see, degrees, titles, experience. But sometimes, the greatest talents are hidden in plain sight. And when we discover them, it is our duty to recognize them. The audience shifted uneasily, curious. The CEO turned slightly and gestured toward the side door. Rahim stepped in. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Employees blinked in disbelief, whispering furiously. He was no longer in his janitor's uniform. Instead, he wore a crisp suit, dark, perfectly tailored. His posture was straight, his presence dignified, though his humble eyes remained the same. Mr. Johnson continued, greater than, for years, many of you have walked past this man, seeing only the surface. But what most of you didn't see is that Rahim speaks not one, not two, but 9 languages. And what you certainly didn't see is his heart, his dedication, and his brilliance. Today, I am proud to announce that Rahim will serve as our company's new international relations officer. The room erupted. Some clapped instantly, others stared in stunned silence before slowly joining in. The applause grew thunderous, echoing through the hall. As if on cue, a group of international clients who had been invited stepped forward. One by one, they greeted Rahim in their native tongues, French, Japanese, Spanish, Arabic. And each time, Rahim replied fluently, seamlessly, as though he belonged to every culture at once. Employees who once brushed past him in hallways now looked at him with awe. Some were ashamed, realizing how invisible they had made him all these years. Others were inspired, their eyes shining with respect. Rahim stood tall, bowing his head slightly in gratitude, his voice steady as he addressed them. Greater than, I may have been cleaning floors, but I was always listening. And I learned that no matter where we come from, language is the thread that ties us together. I am honored to serve this company in a new way. The applause swelled again, louder than before. And in that moment, Rahim was no longer the janitor. He was the man who reminded an entire office, and perhaps the world, that brilliance can live in the most unexpected places.